Hello, welcome to Relationship Helpers. I'm Laura Ketchie. Parents want what's best for their children. Sometimes in attempts at trying to make things better, they make them worse. That's what today's show is about. In 11 Ways Parents Sabotage Their Children's Future, we will take a look at some common obstacles parents can unwittingly place in their children's paths to becoming well-adjusted adults. It's almost a daily occurrence. I hear, "My child will not do his homework. I have to sit on him to get it done." Another variation of this is, "She's great at school, but when she's home, that's a different story." These days, parents are on high alert. The school emails them. The teacher emails them. Grades are posted online. Numbers and statuses are constantly available to us. Instead of creating a sense of security, it's backfired majorly. Parents are getting more involved in their children's lives, and although that sounds good on the surface, in many ways it's not. From the day Junior's born, he's set forth on a learning journey. It's a parent's job to foster a learning environment. From day one, he is being prepared for the day that he will be a self-supporting adult. I think our culture has lost sight of this. We have gotten caught up in the minutia of status, grades, and extracurricular activities, and have shirked the importance of learning the basics of life. Essentially, kids are growing into adults who do not know how to adult, but they can take a test. Now, I don't want to parent shame here. That won't get us anywhere. Instead, I'd like to offer some alternatives today to some common issues that have developed recently in our culture.
So, we are going to talk about 11 ways parents sabotage their kids' future and how to stop. So, Laura, let's look at these 11 ways that parents sabotage their kids' future.
And in doing so, we're going to try to encourage independence and self-sufficiency in the children. So our first one, and I hear this pretty often, our first one is do not do your child's homework or projects.
Whoa.
I don't know how many parents that are up late at night working on their child's homework or trying to help them get projects done. Meanwhile, the parent's got to get to the office in the morning and has had less sleep and has less energy to give the job, the source of their living.
Right. So you have all these parents making these nice projects. And, of course, what do the teachers think when they see this? They think, wow, that parent did a great job.
Well, and unfortunately, it ups the ante for science fairs and things because, the poor child that did their project on their own, the lettering's going to be a little funky and all, right. But that's much better than all these other children that the parents did it for them.
Right. So it's really just taking away a lot of creativity and freedom from the child. And not only that, but it's not allowing, in a way, the child to make a mistake or, per se, have a failure, meaning getting a bad grade.
Which, yes, and we will be talking a little bit more about that later.
Okay.
But the most creative age on earth is anyone under the age of 18. I believe children are the most creative. That kind of mellows with age, unfortunately. We get a little bit jaded maybe sometimes, but so we need to be able to recognize that our children are capable.
So it instills confidence in them.
It does.
If we allow them to do that project.
It does. So from like an attachment theory standpoint, I think the most helpful thing is to show your child that you're a presence, that you're a helpful presence if they have a question, but not to hover over them to make sure that they get an A on everything. Your child's not getting the A, you are essentially. But
well, let me ask you this, Laura. So I'm thinking about this, and for my clients, I can think that maybe one of the reasons that they do the child's homework, or sometimes that they may do the child's project, is time. And what I mean is that they feel like they can get it done quicker if they do it instead of if they spend the time and take the patience to sit there with the child, let the child figure it out, and they just help them when the child asks for help. Does that make sense?
It does, but what ends up happening is they're undercutting that child's opportunity to learn through the process. The process is so important.
So it's kind of the parents' busyness, being so busy that they feel that they're limited with their time, that they end up doing the child's homework sometimes or projects because they feel like that's just the way to get it done faster, to check off the list. Hey, child's homework's done.
Wow. So it becomes part of the parents' list. And that's actually another thing that I hear a lot is when a parent's talking about their day, they're talking about the time that they're spending with their child and their child's homework.
Right.
When, you know what? If left to his or her own devices, that child may very well not even need that parent's help that day.
Right. They may be able to do it on their own, but...
And something else, too, is sometimes some parents struggle with feeling like they need to be needed. And this is a situation where, well, the child needs the parent, or the parent
Right, so it meets an emotional need for the parent, maybe.
Right, which is an unhealthy thing.
Right. Well, so that kind of leads us into another area of where the parent may overstep these boundaries or this appropriate area that a child should be doing. This is number 2. Ooh. Do not excuse your child from chores.
This one's a big one. If I want to piggyback, I'm going to piggyback on what we were just saying about the parent being so busy and the families being so busy. This is something I'm seeing over and over again, and it's that parents either do not at all give their child any chores, or they've told their child children that they have certain things that they're supposed to do around the house, but then they basically pardon them from these tasks because they're so busy with sports and so busy with homework and so busy.
Right. So, and when I think about this, to me, it's what I'm hearing is that the priority for the parents is maybe a clean home, everything straightened up and organized, is to them, or they get this emotional need filled when their house is in order and straightened up, and so they go do it themselves, excuse their kids from it, and that becomes the priority over really their relationship with their child. And that kind of goes back to, and I think about one of our podcasts, our previous podcast, when I talked to Dr. Ludwig, and I asked him his bit of wisdom, and this is a man who's been counseling for 45 years or more, and he says what's most important, relationships. And when we neglect those relationships, when the relationship is not the focus, not the priority, then we start getting some of these unhealthy behaviors.
It sends the message that the parent can always be the safety net in any situation. And 2, it sends the message that the child is not capable. And that creates an enabling relationship.
Right. Very
where
unhealthy.
The child is not able, not capable, and mom or dad can handle it for me. So it creates a codependent type relationship.
Right, and it doesn't help the child's self-worth or self-esteem.
No.
So going on to our next one, which we were talking about priorities relationship, priorities of a clean house or whatever. Number 3, this is number 3 in the way that a parent sabotages their kid's future, is let's not make academics priority 1. So a lot of parents are making academics their priority.
Yes, it's all about the SAT scores. It's all about the straight A's. It's all about doing every single bit of extra credit possible, and it's all about how many schools you've applied to, and it's become ridiculous.
So the academics are becoming the end all, when the reality is that we're finding out, I mean, at least from my viewpoint, because I'm counseling adults, is that these academics don't always, and many times, do not equate to productive, healthy adults.
They've put so much emphasis on scores and grades that they've lost sight of emotional quotient, the child's ability to interact with other people. There's not a grade placed on how they are on the playground, how they are with their peers. There's not a grade placed on that. There's not emphasis and priority placed on social skills.
Right, not on social skills. And then how many adults do we have, or how many millennials do we have that have college degrees, but what do they not have?
Jobs.
Yes. Which
brings us to number 4. But let me backtrack just a second here, because there is an article that I wrote not long ago that you'll find a link to on the show notes. It's called 5 Things Your Child Needs More Than College. Be sure to take a read on that one to give you a little more direction and ideas on that topic.
Right, and that's on our website at relationshiphelpers.net. That's where the show notes are. Go there, and there's many resources there.
Now, on to the teens need jobs.
Yeah, so number 4 is
teens need jobs. It's become a common thing now for parents to show up at teenagers' job interviews and even older children's interviews. And that would have been completely unheard of 30 years ago. So, we've got employers now that are shocked when parents are showing up and they're doing the talking for the kid. A job interview, it's really an important life lesson, just like a kid doing its own homework. It's a life lesson. It's something they need to do on their own.
Wow, and how undercutting can that be when a parent is answering the questions for a child during a job interview?
Something else that strikes me about it is, and I think this is because we're from a different generation, I would be embarrassed by that, but these kids don't even have the wherewithal to be embarrassed by it because they're so used to it.
Wow. They're so used to the coddling, so used to their parents doing too much for them that they don't realize how unhealthy it is.
Right.
Or that it's just became so normalized with them and their peers.
So it's really important that teens have the opportunity to interview, and I know some schools now are making that a priority and having opportunities for kids to do mock interviews, which I think is so important, and I hope more schools do that and make them do it even earlier.
So this is where kids are learning professional skills,
right.
Professional speaking skills, social skills, so that they talk appropriately in a business setting.
Correct. So the interview skills is an important part of getting a job, but another part of having a job as a teen is learning conflict resolution skills.
Wow, that's very important.
It is very important. If a teenager does not have a job, we're just basically having school as their opportunity for conflict resolution. If one is able to get a job, that opens the opportunity for the teenager to have to deal with the public. And the public can bring just about anything to the table. Right.
You deal with a lot of different people when you work at a grocery store like I did, and I can remember one of the, of course, this is back then when you asked paper or plastic.
You just dated yourself right there.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. But I could just think of the conflicts we had where we had to interact with them, and where we actually had to go out to their vehicles and put their groceries in their cars. And when you would spill something or mess something up, and you would have to tell them about that, you're spilling it in their car, or their car was maybe just kind of not so, how do you say it, clean. So, yeah, there's so many valuable lessons that you learn.
And one more that I'd like to suggest is, and this is from my own personal experience of having a job as a teenager, is I had some conflict with my supervisor. And so that provided an opportunity. It was almost like a safety cushion because I could experience conflict resolution with an adult who was there to oversee me. And so that was easier to deal with than having to deal with someone in the public. It was actually extra conflict resolution skills learned in the safety of a job.
Wow, yes, that's very healthy. My supervisors love me. I'm sorry about that, Laura. But So this talking to the public, being assertive with people in the public, people that you do not know, that is very healthy for a child. So that kind of leads us to our number 5.
Allowing your child to order for himself. This is a big one. Parents, I can't stress it enough. When you go out to eat and you're sitting around the table and the server comes to take your orders, do not order for your child. I mean, it's understandable if they're not able to read yet, but when your child knows that they want the grilled cheese and fries,
or the macaroni and cheese.
Exactly. Have them tell the server.
Right, so this is already at a young age, they're building these skills. And so as they learn these skills of ordering for themselves, of buying things for themselves, what happens to their self-esteem?
They can't believe in themselves. They don't believe in themselves. Yet again, another situation it's a situation where your child knows what he wants. So why isn't he saying it to the server? It's because the parent has allowed the child to not speak for himself, which it creates a situation of an enabling relationship, and it creates a situation where the child develops a low sense of self-esteem.
Yes, and some, just a small sense of helplessness.
That's right. And so they become overly dependent on the parent.
Right. So they don't feel comfortable or confident enough to do some of these healthy social skills on their own.
That's right. Parents, I would highly suggest, hey, if there's a night where you want to order in pizza, have your teenager call up the pizza place for delivery.
Right, most definitely. And then if they're old enough, have them go get it.
Or even better yet, get in their car and drive.
Yes.
Make the order at the pizza place.
Yes.
Pick up the order and take it home.
Yes, which leads us to number 6. Teenagers should drive.
Yes.
I am baffled when I have teenagers that say that, if they're old enough, they're 17, 18, 19, or 20 or whatever, and they say, no, I don't have my license. And so it's not only that they say they don't have their license, but they don't care if they ever get their license or when they do get their license. It just baffles me. I'm just from a whole nother generation where we celebrated when we could get our license, that freedom that came with that, and where you could go where you want to go, where you can go get a video, or you can go get see a friend, or just go hang out at Burger King. Okay, well, that's what we used to do. But
But yeah, you were standing outside the door of the DMV before it opened that morning because you were going to get your license on your 16th birthday.
Right. So this is, as teenagers, as a child grows, they come into their teenage years, this is another step of them learning skills to be independent. And that's what a parent should want for their child. They should want them to grow up to be independent, right?
That's correct.
Because, and as I tell my parents of these teenagers who don't want, I said, do you want this child here living with you when they're 40?
I think part of this, too, goes to the busyness of parents, which we were talking about earlier. I think that one of the obstacles for children or teenagers driving is that period where the parent has to supervise while they have their permit. I think a lot of parents bring their own anxiety into the situation, and they do not want to have to endure that process of sitting there and letting the teen have to be responsible for the well-being of everyone in the car and the vehicle. And so it's almost like that magical thinking that we were talking about in another episode, where we were talking about signs that you're susceptible to an affair, that your marriage is susceptible to an affair. We're talking about magical thinking. I think this is a situation of magical thinking as well, where a parent will just, kind of hope it away that the teenager won't want their license, so somehow magically the kid will grow up and leave the home, and that time period will pass and they won't have to endure the permit process.
Right, so it's really their own fear keeping it from happening, the parents' fear.
And I think fear is a good word to use in general in all of these things.
Right, so managing a parent's fear is what really needs to happen many times for a child to grow up in a healthy manner. This, we've talked about it before, kids ordering their own food. We've talked about kids getting, teenagers getting jobs. We've talked about them getting their own cars with more responsibility. That kind of leads us to number 7 in our list of 11 ways parents sabotage their kids' future. And this one is kids need to handle their own conflicts.
Oh, yes. I think teachers these days can back this one up. I think that they are thrust into so many situations now where parents are trying to settle the disputes of their children, or maybe even parents get involved with teachers because they have a beef with the teacher rather than the kid, or the kid has a beef with the teacher and the parent doesn't encourage the child to try to solve it on his own. It's really important for a parent to kind of use his or her own discretion on this on a case-by-case issue. I know there will be situations where a parent must be involved if, the child is being physically harmed. Of course, a parent needs to be involved. But these little disagreements, little playground disagreements.
So these little playground disagreements shouldn't be seen as something negative, but actually as an opportunity for your child to become assertive, to work on their skills of being assertive, and actually opportunities for you as a parent to coach them on being assertive. And let me roll back. Let me explain. When I say assertive, I mean speaking the truth in love. That means speaking directly and honestly in a calm, relaxed manner, but not being passive, not being mousy. And then not at the same time, it's not yelling or being aggressive, but it's actually speaking calmly, directly, and honestly about their feelings, their wants, and their needs. So these conflicts that these children may have on the playground is an excellent opportunity for them to work on their assertive skills, where they can say, whoever their friend is, Bobby, you hurt my feelings when you hit me in the back of the head with the kickball. I didn't like that, and it made me mad. Don't do that to me next time. Okay. That would have been a very assertive way for little Junior to address his friend Bobby.
All right. Moving on, let's look at the 8th thing here, and that's doing away with micromanagement. Another thing that I'm seeing in parenting is it's a trend, actually, of micromanagement. I think we see this like in play date culture. It's like, let's set up a play date, and this is what the kids are going to do, and it's from this time to that time at this place, and there's so many specifics, and it hinders the child from being able to have a little more kind of authority in his life. I mean, he loses his opportunity to be creative. Children are the most creative of us all, so they need that opportunity. But when things have been so micromanaged, it negates their gifts. So
children don't need so much structured play. They need some time where their play is not structured.
That's correct. They need free play. Play is how children learn. And when they're really young children, it's the only way they learn up until a certain point. So when you deny them the freedom of being creative and just the freedom of free time, you're denying them the opportunity to learn the best way they know how.
Right, and actually the quickest way for them to learn.
That's right.
To play. And even as I do play therapy, and the type of play therapy that I use is non-directive play therapy, which is like counselor Gary Landreth. He's kind of one of the forefathers, I guess, in play therapy out of North Texas State. And he recommends with play therapy is allowing the child to take the initiative, allowing them free play to do what they like. And with their play, children are able to process things emotionally. So process events. So let's say the fight that Junior had with Bobby out on the playground. him playing later up in his room with his G.I. Joes or Transformers or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with it, he's able to maybe reenact that and play through that of different ways that he could have handled the situation. So this is what children do when they have unstructured play. They're allowed to actually process their emotions of what happened there in these situations. So unstructured play is very healthy, and many times when that's allowed, as Dr. Landreth will advocates, the child is able to work through the situation, work through the anxiety caused by whatever conflict they had much quicker.
Okay. And if you're not sure if you're micromanaging your child's life, take a look at our show notes for today's episode. You'll find an article I've written called The Greatest Lessons That You Cannot Teach Your Children, Overcoming Helicopter Parenting. That will give you a little more of this in depth on micromanagement.
Right, and so that'll be a link on our website, relationshiphelpers.net. It'll be a link on that page.
Okay, let's look at number 9 here. Family time is a must. We've said it over and over again today. We've talked about how busy our lives can be and that we live in this demanding world. But kids need to know that home is their foundation. They need to know that home is the soft place to fall. And so that means protecting the family time. It's being intentional about doing that. Setting the boundaries in place to make sure that there's time spent at home amongst the family.
So this means that the parents are very intentional about this time at home with the children. One way that I advocate, that I encourage with my couples, is to set up dinner time, making sure that you put boundaries around that and say, hey, our family has dinner together, and that it's structured. What I mean by structured is no one starts eating before the food is on the table. No one starts eating until everyone's seated. All the cell phones are put away, turned off.
And there's no eating in your room.
No.
Unless,
well, everybody's eating at the same table.
Yeah, everybody's together.
Right.
It's not, this is something I see with families. If they're under the same roof, they'll be independently eating. They won't be eating with each other.
Right. So dinner time, this is a big social time for the family, and it should be that way. And hopefully, in a healthy family, that will be the tradition that you are passing down to your children and showing them, modeling to them that, hey, this is important. Our conversations with each other are important. My conversation with you is important. My conversation with Mom or my conversation with Dad is important.
So they see a marital relationship play out in front of them is what they see.
Right. And then they see healthy eating, hopefully, as well. With both of them.
Yeah, and also something else is they develop more mature conversation skills.
Right, as they see the parents interact with each other and with the siblings.
That's right. Because if they're with kids all day at school, they will learn some things, but then when they're at home and they're amongst their parents, they can learn some more mature things. Okay? So, and this also is a good escape from the media when you don't have the technology at the table.
Most definitely.
But it's also an opportunity for kids to discuss the media with their parents.
Right. So it gives an opportunity for them to discuss their thoughts, their ideas.
If they heard something in a song today or saw something on Facebook that bothered them or something, this would be an opportunity to air those things out.
Correct. And so this is an opportunity for you to, if you're wanting to instill values into your children, dinner time is one of the best times to do it.
All right. Moving on, another thing that's important, the 10th thing that parents can do that could sabotage a child's future is to not allow your child to learn to accept their own personal responsibility for failure. When a child is not allowed to fail or fail and then experience the consequences of the failure, then he doesn't develop the resiliency and ability to fall down and pick himself back up again. So it's important that the parent not blame teachers or others for the child's shortcomings. If a child comes home with a D on a science test, Don't blame the teacher for it first. Look into what the child did first. Don't make it the teacher's problem firsthand. First off the bat, your child, I know he may be the light of your life, but he's human. He makes mistakes. He will be more humble and agreeable human being if he's taught how to deal with failure.
Right. So he's learns to accept failure, and as you allow your child to take responsibility for failure, you actually allow them to hopefully understand failure in a different manner, in a different attitude. And the attitude that I mean is that failure is not necessarily a bad thing. That failure is just another opportunity to learn. What did you learn from failure? You learned that didn't work. That was, and seeing this instead of as a pass-fail, but seeing these attempts at certain things as really ways to learn to what really works.
Hear this out, perfectionists. I know that's one of the big issues with people that struggle with perfectionism, is that they have such a strong fear of failure. So a lot of times it just disables them to the point where they don't do anything.
Of course. And what did Edison say? He said, well, no, I was a failure, 1,000 or so times, really. He said, I'm a huge failure. I just got it right once.
That's right. When he was talking about the light bulb, making the filament inside the light bulb, he used all sorts of different materials to try to figure out what would work inside that light bulb, and everything kept burning out.
Right.
But he kept using different materials. He did not give up.
Right. So I think that's an important value to instill into children, is that, failure is not a bad thing, and it's not something to be feared.
It's a lesson.
Yes. Which kind of brings us to our last one, which is, as we're kind of reframing failure into the positive light, that, failure is actually an opportunity instead of, as our society really sees failure as a bad thing. Number 11 is speaking positively to your children. This is giving them encouragement, helping them to have healthy attitudes about issues, about themselves, about their siblings, about school, church, everything that they interact with.
Yeah, your kids, they're watching you. It's really important that you watch your own mouth. Do you complain a lot in front of your children? I mean, are you complaining about work in front of your children, or complaining about your spouse? Oftentimes complaining is a result of blaming someone else for the way you feel.
Right. And what I explain as well when I go over kind of my assertiveness communication, complaining is really very passive aggressive. This is where the person is not taking responsibility for what's happening, but they're complaining about what someone else has done or in that certain situation, which is very unhealthy. Mm-hmm. They're only looking at all the negative things and not at the positive things that have been happening or that they've been blessed with in the situation or what they may be going through.
So it's really important that you model a more positive attitude by catching yourself in the midst. I mean, don't beat yourself up if you find yourself complaining in front of your child. Just catch yourself. Catch yourself in the middle of a complaint and say out loud, how could I look at this differently? When your child hears you say, how could I look at this differently? It kind of helps to create in that child's mind another way of dealing with things. Oh, I saw Mom ask the question, how could I look at this differently? Maybe that's a question I need to ask next time. They may not consciously say that to themselves, but when they've had it modeled, how could I look at this differently, they're more likely to do it.
So the more positive you are, the more likelihood, the more positive your child will be about situations and about life.
And this, I think, goes to something that we're hearing a lot these days, which is about self-esteem. So in conclusion, we're wrapping this up. There's a culture of low self-esteem, and I think it's rooted in a low sense of mastery. And what we've talked about today is giving your child the opportunity to develop a sense of mastery in different skills. We're hearing a lot these days about young adults feeling very insecure and dissatisfied with life. They're feeling really empty and powerless. So starting out a child early with the intention of helping him develop these skills and having a mastery over them will be one of the greatest experiences you can give them. Remember, sometimes teaching means getting out of the way.
To recap, the 11 ways to encourage independence and self-sufficiency in children are: number 1, do not do your child's homework or projects. Number 2, do not excuse your child from chores. Number 3, let's not make academics priority number 1. Number 4, teens need jobs. Allow teens to get jobs. Number 5, allow your child to order for himself. Number 6, teenagers should drive. Allow your teen or encourage your teen to get their license. Number 7, kids need to handle their own conflicts. So allow your kids to handle their own conflicts. Number 8, do away with micromanagement. Number 9, family time is a must. So parents need to put boundaries around that time and be intentional about it. Number 10, teach your child to accept responsibility for failure. And number 11, speak positively to your children. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our podcast, and we will see you next week.
Until next time. Did you catch yourself doing some of these things? If so, we have more information on parenting strategies to overcome this issue on our show notes page at relationshiphelpers.net. Again, that's relationshiphelpers.net. Thanks for listening. Note that accuracy and authority in regards to the subject matter covered today is not a replacement for professional care. Neither the host, the clinicians, or the guests are rendering clinical or other professional advice. Seek professional help if you need it.